How many Jotos does it take to start a podcast?
3.
Alejandro,
Joaquin,
and Charlie.
Amid a pandemic, 3 brown queer men from Los Angeles connected through laughs, tears, and joterias.
Yeah, but that was all last year. A lot has happened since season 1. Now we're coming at you bigger, better, y con más orgullo.
you are about to listen to some of our personal experiences as 3 brown Jotos.
Jotángeles, agarren sus bebidas, sus chucherias y súbanle a volumen porque se va a armar.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Charlie, and welcome to another episode of Three Brown Jotos Podcast.
Cuvo, everyone. It's me, Alejandro.
Hey, what's up, homies? ¿Cómo están? It's me, Joaquin. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the relationship between the health profession and community. We are currently experiencing several health pandemics and epidemics that are impacting communities in many ways. So we thought it was important to get into this conversation. And we have a very special guest with us who's an expert in the topic, who's going to be talking to us today about medical mistrust and all these kind of things that play a role into health outcomes of community. So everyone, welcome Ángel Martínez.
Bienvenidos.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
How you doing, Angel?
I'm doing good. It's good to be here with y'all. Thank y'all for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, this has been a while in the making, so we're excited to have another honorary Joto in the Three Brown Jotos group. So welcome. Could you start off by introducing yourself?
Of course, I am. I'm the honorary 4th member of now 4 Brown Jotos for today. You know, yeah. So I mean, medical mistrust is when there's some. Medicine is a system, like many other systems, and our healthcare system has had. Continues to have and has had deficiencies, and there continues to be disparities that impact our health. And medical mistrust is the lack of confidence and the ability to show up as who you are and what your experience is and what and who you have continued to kind of think through being. And realize that like the system that you're showing up to is not one that you trust, right? So you obviously, may have gone to a doctor and I can remember being 7 years old and being like, oh, I'm not going to talk about that, So there were certain things that you don't feel confident in. And I say confidence is because I think that in order to build trust, regardless of what we're talking about, there's got to be a level of confidence to be able to do that, right? And so medical mistrust for me and in the way that I look at it is about the lack of confidence that other people haven't honored us with, and the way then we show up to say, no, I don't trust you. Working with the Men Who Have Sex with Men program, that was also another, it's called Empoderate or something like that. Yeah. They come up with, it's like a mnemonic for all these shit. I was like, yeah. And so that was what I was working on. But the sister program was Mariposas. And for a chosen family, it was one of those things where I had not yet had much interface or interaction or experiences with trans women. And Gladys was her name. She was running the program there. And she was also a sex worker, and she still worked full time for the clinic, like La Clínica de la Raza there. And, it was the first time where I began to understand, the experiences within like a healthcare system and just navigating health and the conversations that take place among trans women. And then the fact that they most times had to have chosen family, right? And that they leaned in on each other to have conversations about where to go get care and how to access medication. And if you wanted to have surgery, where you would go to be able to have access to that, or where you would get hormones, because in 2008, you were not accessing hormones through the clinic at that time, right? And so chosen family also helps guide and inform. And I think that the dopest thing about like being a queer and a fucking Joto is that like most times we're down to talk about just about anything.
Yeah,
and sometimes, I mean, if y'all are that close, like, look at this. And I'm like, bitch, I don't want to see that. We're
definitely that close.
I was just like, I don't want to see that. But, so it was one of those things like, I remember sitting in the room and like learning about about how to inject hormones and the support that they shared with each other, and how beautiful it was that like they like held each other in that way, and how also they looked out for me and we looked out for each other. And I think the benefit of having chosen family, which is what I love about having chosen family, is that we'll jump into a conversation of just about anything. And even if we are shy about it, the shyest person in the room will eventually come along.
Yeah, that's true. And say the most like out of pocket shit in the home. Like, wait, what? Right. Exactly.
I think that we all kind of value the fact that we, at least I feel that I have a responsibility, right? Within chosen family, coming from the background that I do, working in health, to have those conversations. And I love having those uncomfortable, unscripted, vamos a hablar de vergas aquí, de culo, all of the things. And yes, you're right. Even the shyest person in the group, they may be like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. But al final, they're like, okay, well, this and this. But I think it's really important when we're talking about like medical mistrust, and we are talking about chosen family, and how there is guidance there in is like, you know, where do you go to access your care? You know, why do you go there? And it's, you know, maybe I feel comfortable. Maybe they're a queer doctor. I know when I was looking for my PCP, I was looking for a doctor that was queer. And it's not like you can really go online and look up
queer doctors.
It doesn't happen very often. And so really a lot of it was like going back to my chosen family and being like, all right, cuinas, like, ¿a dónde van a recibir su medical care? And it starts with that. And so I think that it's super important. And I love that you love that focus as well. And I wanted to just piggyback on something, you know, at work, I lead our biomedical prevention program, all of our PrEP and PEP services. And it is even 2020, 22, whatever year we are in, we're still seeing that like, well, you know, if you didn't do those behaviors, you wouldn't need this mentality.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that mentality, and unfortunately is, and this is the thing, is like public health is not like rocket science. Like it's behaviors and attitudes and how we interact, and we're social beings. Like that's always going to be a thing, right? I think that a system like healthcare doesn't like to have certain things called out about it.
Absolutely.
Right. And part of it is because these systems, again, as I shared before, is like, it's a bunch of white men, right? Like we can break down whether we're looking at the CDC or the NIH and how these systems like, you know, choose to follow a specific narrative. Because I can guarantee you, like, if you put a bunch of like Jotos and LGBTQ folks up in that mix, how much of that would change? But then that resistance to even get there becomes really important, right? Because I think that like we're not, I mean, while we show up and we know like where to send our folks, right? We're also not at the table where all of that shit is also happening, right? Like we're not at the table to be able to make those decisions and to really interject and say, yeah, we need to stop that narrative.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that, at least in the work that I've been doing, is when I hear patients come back and they're like, hey, you know, this is what the provider told me, that I should stop doing the behaviors instead of taking PrEP. And I'm like, that's not what I want. And I'm real quick to bring that back and bring it up to whomever I need to within the company, within the organization, because we can't be disseminating information that's hurtful. We had a provider who talked about to a patient about their partner's HIV positive, and they were like, "You equals you is not a thing." And it's like, wait, what? And this patient had this idea that they were being safe with their partner that was undetectable, and it's throwing this wrench in this conversation about like, no, that's not correct information. So when we're talking about medical mistrust, like what information is correct and why, you know, who do I really trust? And because we're expected to trust our doctors, we're expected to trust the field of healthcare. And that's a difficult thing to swallow sometimes.
Well, I think I'm sorry to cut you off, but just real quick, because I think that ties back to the culture thing, is that in our culture, they teach us not to question authority.
Yeah.
For instance, at an early age, right? Like, I remember my dad telling my teacher in elementary school que me jalara las orejas if she needed to, if I was acting up, because that's the much of respect and authority that we give these folks that sit in a place of power and of knowledge. So think about how generationally that's taken taken down in every sense, right? Like we're taught not to speak up to the uncle who might be that uncle that nobody wants to be around with because he's a little weird and does weird shit. But we can't speak up about it because it's el tío, like, you know. So all these things manifest into the way that we maneuver in society. And I think that's why for us, sometimes it's also like we hear authority or we hear like this role, right? Like a title, like titles are so fucking important to people, like doctor, professor, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, that's the epitome of it. That's the knowledge. Like, no, actually our lived experiences and what we go through is that's expertise in itself. That's shit that does not get captured. Like the shit that happens in 2022, unfortunately, sometimes the way that these systems are built do not get worked on until 2030 because it takes 5 years to build a study. We need to build a focus group. We need to hire all these like white people to come ask you brown and black people, how do you do things so that we can learn about. No, like, so that to me is also like very much that.
In preparation for this episode, Angel, you mentioned something about damn if you do, damn if you don't. So can you just explain to us like how that really impacts our community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, with the history of the shit that's gone down, right? Like there's a history of mistrust that's just rooted in survival, right? Like that our antepasados had to just deal. Right? Like they had to survive. I mean, we clearly didn't get here just because they survived. Seriously. And now we're here. Right? And whether that's all the way back to like colonization or even the Middle Passage, you know, and we can look across any racial and ethnic demographic and something has gone down. Yep. Right? And it's not always just about being in a clinical space, right? Internment camps for Japanese folks, like that fucked with their health. Yeah. Right? We look at and I'll say this, like, you know, we don't want to always call it the Tuskegee study, right? And the impact that had on Black males, but it's really the U.S. Health Services study of untreated syphilis, right? Like the U.S. Public Health Service study, right? Government doing this stuff to be able to figure out how to treat syphilis and put Black men through this, right? And that also happened in Guatemala, right? You can look at what happened in like sterilization between anywhere from as far down as Brazil in South America and El Salvador, all the way to like most recently here in LA and even Native American women, right? That was being done by all government systems, right? Like, it's like, so how do you expect folks not to get to a space where like they want to continue to trust or engage or build off that and constantly taking, right? Our gifts, right? And then turning that around and then also weaponizing that against us, right? Like now all of a sudden, oh, well, they don't want to come in because they don't care. No, we don't. It's not that we don't care, right? We're damned if we do and damned if we don't, because when we do come in, right? I come in, I want to get prep, but the doctor doesn't know shit about it. And he was like, well, why do you want prep? He was like, what's prep? First of all, I was like, oh God. I mean, I happen to know what it is, but if, you know, as I've interacted with like other kin, I'm like, well, you know, I don't need to be, that's why you went to school all those years. Shit. Like, what the hell did you do with those 8 years? Yeah. You know? But if they don't know what it is, right? Or they don't know how to prescribe the right STI and HIV, like, screeners, right? Cause I mean, bitch, I'm topping, bottoming, and all the way around,
okay,
right?
Bitch, and it's Friday, too.
Exactly. And I've already had some bubbly, so.
Okay, what's up? So we ready.
But if they don't know what to do, then, like, you know, like, how do you expect me to, like, one, care for myself if you're not clearly caring for me, right? And when we show up, like, you know, prenatal care for Black women, like, that's why Black maternity rates are as what they are. Like, infant mortality rates are, and it doesn't matter whether you're educated or not.
Exactly.
Right? Like, or you have a high income. It's because you're a Black woman in the way that you get treated. So you're damned if you show up. You're damned if you do. And then you're damned if you don't. Right? Like, you don't show up because you have this mistrust. You have, you know, generational trauma of things and shit. Like, you don't even need to show up, right? Like, you know, we look at Acela, Southeast LA, like all of the ground and all of the environmental justice work that's had to happen because where they're placing folks at is fucked up, dirt where that should
full of lead,
up, like lead and paint.
Yeah,
I'm like, I mean, that's probably why I am the way I am.
Okay.
Shit.
With that said and done, this is Three Brown Jotos
Out.